the heat death of the universe. You ever wonder what happens at the end? Not just the end of a movie, not the end of a lifetime, not even the end of the earth, but the end of everything. No explosions, no cataclysm, no final battle of light against darkness. Just an ending, silent, unstoppable, the ultimate fade to black. That's what heat death is. And if the physics behind it is right, then we are all, right now, living in the middle of a universe that's already dying. It sounds dramatic, right? But this isn't some sci-fi doomsday theory. This is actual thermodynamics. It's written into the very laws of the universe. And the scariest part, it's not just possible, it's inevitable. All right, let's break it down in a way that won't melt your brain. Or maybe it will. So, how does the universe actually die? To answer that, we need to talk about something called entropy. You might have heard the word before. It's basically a fancy way of saying things break down over time. Leave a hot cup of coffee on the table. It cools down. Ice melts. Stars burn out. Everything in the universe, from the tiniest atom to the biggest galaxy, is constantly moving from order to disorder. That's entropy. And entropy is a one-way street. You can't reverse it. Once energy spreads out, you can't put it back together perfectly. It's like breaking a glass. No matter how much you try, you'll never get it back to exactly the way it was before. Now, here's where it gets terrifying. If everything in the universe follows this rule, then eventually, all the energy in the universe will be evenly spread out. No more heat, no more movement, no more life. That's heat death. And if you're thinking, wait, what about stars? Don't they create energy? Yeah, but only for a while, because stars die too. And once the last star goes out, there's nothing left to fight against entropy. The universe just stops. No more warmth, no more light, just an empty, frozen abyss where nothing can ever happen again. It's like reality itself has powered down. And the worst part, you won't even know when it happens, because it won't be a sudden event, it won't be a moment of impact. The universe will just keep getting colder, darker, emptier, until one day it's so stretched thin that nothing new can ever form again. But the real death, the moment when the last flickering bits of warmth finally fade. Try 10 to the power of 100 years. That's a 1 followed by 100 zeros. The scale of time we're talking about is so absurdly long that the human brain literally cannot comprehend it. But it doesn't matter how long it takes. It will happen, because entropy doesn't stop. It never stops. And once it reaches its final stage, the universe will be nothing more than a vast, silent graveyard of frozen particles, drifting through space forever. The last echoes of existence, stretching infinitely into a future where time itself might not even make sense anymore. But wait, it actually gets worse. So, we're talking about a future where there's no heat, no movement, no light, just an endless frozen void. That's already terrifying. But let's go even deeper. Because the thing is, the process of dying isn't sudden. The universe won't just shut down all at once. It's going to drag it out over an unimaginable span of time. So let's take a trip through the slow, inevitable funeral of the cosmos. Step 1. The death of stars. Right now, stars are cosmic engines, factories of heat and light. They burn hydrogen, smashing atoms together in nuclear fusion, and that's what keeps space from becoming completely dark. But here's the thing. Stars are burning through their fuel reserves like there's no tomorrow. And there will come a time when the last star burns its final atom of hydrogen. What happens then? Well, first, the biggest stars die in spectacular explosions called supernovae, collapsing into black holes or neutron stars. The smaller stars, like our Sun, just quietly fade into white dwarfs, cooling down over trillions of years. And that's when things start getting really bleak, because once the last star fades into a cold black cinder, the universe enters the next phase of its death. No more sunsets, no more galaxies shining in the night, just darkness. A universe where the only things left are black holes and frozen husks of dead stars. Step 2. The era of black holes. With no stars left, black holes become the last dominant force in the universe. And they don't stop at just existing. Oh no, they keep feeding. They consume whatever remnants of matter still exist. Rogue planets, dead stars, even other black holes. But even black holes have an expiration date. This is where things get extra terrifying, because over an unimaginable timescale, even black holes will start to die. Wait, what? Black holes can die? Yep. Thanks to something called Hawking radiation, black holes slowly leak tiny amounts of energy over time. It's an insanely slow process, but in about 10 to the power of 100 years, even the largest black holes in existence will evaporate into nothingness. And when that happens, nothing will remain. Step 3. The final darkness. At this point, there are no stars, no black holes, no galaxies, nothing but an endless expanse of cold, dark space filled with stray, lonely particles. But here's the thing, those particles, they don't do anything. There's no heat left to transfer, no new stars forming, no planets orbiting, just a vast eternal nothingness where no more physics takes place. And that's it. That's the final state of the universe, a void that will last for eternity. And unlike the explosive deaths we're used to in sci-fi, this one won't be violent. There won't be an earth-shattering event. There won't even be a final moment to mark the end. The universe will just fade silently, permanently, into an existence where even time itself might cease to have meaning. And here's the real kicker. This isn't a wild theory. This is the leading scientific model for how the universe ends. Not with a bang, but with an endless whispering cold. So let's sit with that thought for a moment. A universe where nothing happens anymore. No stars, no galaxies, no life. No warmth, no movement, no structure, just an endless frozen vacuum. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. If the universe becomes a place where nothing changes, then what is time? Think about it. Time is only something we measure because things are happening. The movement of planets, the ticking of clocks, the beating of a heart, all of it is a record of change. But if nothing ever changes again, then what does that mean for time itself? Some physicists argue that in a fully entropic universe, time would simply stop. Not in the sense that it freezes, but in the sense that it no longer has meaning. If there's no event to mark a before or after, then what does before and after even mean anymore? Imagine you're standing in a dark, endless void. No movement, no sound, nothing to indicate that time is passing. How would you know if a second has gone by? A minute? A million years? That's what the final stage of heat death might be like. A universe where even time has dissolved into nothingness. the last flickers of existence. Now, there's one last thing left to consider before we move on, because even in the coldest, emptiest universe imaginable, there might still be a last, desperate flicker of something. Some scientists propose that long after all the stars have died, after even black holes have evaporated, after the last bits of heat have been spread thin across eternity, there could still be quantum fluctuations, tiny random blips of energy appearing and disappearing in the void. But in an infinite timeline, if you wait long enough, anything can happen. Which means if we wait long enough, far beyond trillions, quadrillions, or even googolplex years, there is a theoretical chance that a random fluctuation could create a whole new Big Bang. That's right. A new universe, born from the empty husk of the old one. Of course, we have no way of proving if this will actually happen. It's just one possibility among many. But if it's true, then the cycle of existence, birth, life, heat, death, rebirth, might repeat forever. And in some distant future, long after everything we've ever known has faded into oblivion, a whole new reality could emerge, but we wouldn't be there to see it. For us, for our universe, the future is cold, silent, final. That's how the story of the cosmos ends. And that's just the first terrifying theory we're covering tonight. Buckle up, because the next one, it's even worse. Let's talk about something called false vacuum decay, or, as I like to call it, the universe's self-destruct button. False vacuum decay, the universe's self-destruct button. No warning, no escape, just one random quantum fluctuation, one tiny bubble of true vacuum, and everything is gone. But now, let's take a step back. Because the next terrifying question is, has this already happened before? And if it has, are we living inside someone else's vacuum decay? The universe might already be a simulation of a simulation. Think about this. If vacuum decay really works the way we think it does, then we aren't the first universe to exist. Maybe, long before our universe came into being, there were countless others. And maybe, just like ours, they thought they were stable. Until, one day, a random quantum fluctuation reset everything. Their vacuum wasn't the lowest energy state, just like ours might not be. But here's where it gets even stranger. If those universes collapsed into a new vacuum, then whatever physics came next is what we're living in now. And that means our universe isn't the real one. It's just the latest iteration. One in a long, long chain of destroyed realities. A simulation of a simulation of a simulation. Each one collapsing into a better vacuum state over and over and over again. And if that's the case, then this isn't the first time the universe has been erased. It's just our turn next. And here's the really terrifying part. If every universe is just an iteration of the last one, then that means vacuum decay is the natural way for one universe to create the next. It's not a bug in the system. It is the system. It's just a feature of reality itself. One universe dies, another takes its place. And eventually, ours will too. But what if we could escape? Let's get a little weird for a second. If we somehow knew vacuum decay was coming, is there any possible way to survive it? Could we somehow escape into another universe? Well, maybe. There's a theory called quantum tunneling that suggests it might be possible for particles to jump from one energy state to another, and if an advanced enough civilization could manipulate quantum mechanics at an unimaginable scale, maybe, just maybe, they could create their own exit, like a bubble within a bubble, a pocket of space-time that exists outside of the true vacuum's reach, a bunker built inside reality itself. And what if that's already happened? What if some impossibly advanced civilization saw vacuum decay coming and figured out how to escape? Maybe they left clues behind, maybe they tried to warn us, or maybe they've been watching us this entire time, waiting to see if we'll figure it out before it's too late. Because one day that vacuum bubble is coming for us. The question is, what do we do when it does? Alright, let's really dig into this now. Because so far we've talked about how false vacuum decay could already be happening, expanding at the speed of light, coming for us without warning. We've talked about how our universe might just be one of many that came before it, each one resetting itself in an endless cycle of destruction and rebirth. But now, let's ask something even scarier. What if it's triggered? What if some civilizations far more advanced than us figured out how to use it? The doomsday weapon of the universe. Think about it. Right now, humanity is still in its infancy when it comes to science and physics. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of quantum mechanics. But what about a Type 3 civilization? A civilization so advanced that it doesn't just harness the power of its own planet or its own star, but controls energy at the scale of an entire galaxy. To them, stars would be nothing more than fuel stations. Black holes, tools for engineering. And if they've reached a level where they can manipulate the very structure of space-time, what's stopping them from weaponizing vacuum decay? If you wanted to erase an enemy civilization, you wouldn't need spaceships. You wouldn't need lasers or bombs or interstellar war. You'd just need to trigger a vacuum collapse somewhere near them. Set off a chain reaction. Let the bubble of true vacuum spread. And before they even knew what hit them, gone. Their entire civilization erased from existence. And the worst part, no one else in the universe would ever know they were there to begin with. It would be like they never existed. Which means if some advanced intelligence ever did use vacuum decay as a weapon, there's no way for us to know how many civilizations have already been wiped out. There could have been trillions of alien species before us, entire intergalactic empires, and if they're gone, we wouldn't find ruins, we wouldn't find artifacts, because vacuum decay doesn't just destroy, it rewrites reality itself. It's the ultimate eraser, a cosmic reset button. And here's where it gets even creepier. If some ancient civilization did unleash vacuum decay at some point in the past, and that bubble is still spreading, then the moment it reaches us, we would never know. We wouldn't feel it. We wouldn't see it. Everything we know, the entire history of humanity, Earth, life itself, would be gone before the thought even had time to exist. And maybe that's already happened to millions of worlds. Maybe we're just lucky enough to be living in the moments before our turn comes. But let's go even deeper. Because as terrifying as vacuum decay is, there's one last possibility that might be the most unsettling of all. What if, just for a moment, we assume that this already happened? That the universe has already been rewritten, not once, but thousands, even millions of times? What if the reality we experience is just the most recent version of the universe? like layers of paint on an old canvas, with each vacuum decay leaving behind traces of the last universe before it. And what if some of those traces are still out there? Think about it. If the universe has been reset before, maybe not everything got erased. Maybe some fragments, some echoes, some glitches in the fabric of reality still remain. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we keep seeing things we can't explain. Ghost particles, unidentified energy readings, the unexplainable cold spots in the cosmic microwave background. What if these aren't just random occurrences? What if they're artifacts from the last universe? The last time the vacuum collapsed? And what if one day some scientist somewhere finds the ultimate proof? The proof that tells us, beyond a doubt, that we aren't living in the first version of the universe, that this has all happened before, that vacuum decay is inevitable, and that our turn is coming. Next up, we're talking about something just as terrifying, because maybe the universe doesn't just reset itself randomly. Maybe it collapses and restarts in a never-ending cycle. Welcome to the Big Crunch. The Big Crunch, the universe's endless cycle of death and rebirth. We've talked about the slow, inevitable freeze of heat death. We've covered the instant, terrifying reset of false vacuum decay. But now, let's talk about something different. Because what if the universe doesn't actually end? What if, instead of just dying, it collapses in on itself, only to be born again? Welcome to the Big Crunch. And if this theory is right, it means the universe isn't just going to die. It's already died before. The universe is expanding for now. Alright, first we need to talk about something you've probably heard before. The universe is expanding. This isn't just some theory, it's a cold, hard fact. We've measured it. We know it's happening. Everything, every galaxy, every cluster of stars, every piece of matter in existence is moving away from everything else. It's like space itself is stretching. And the reason we know this? Redshift. You ever heard of the Doppler effect? It's the same thing that makes an ambulance siren sound higher pitched as it comes towards you and lower pitched as it moves away. Well, light works the same way. When a galaxy is moving away from us, its light stretches out, shifting towards the red end of the spectrum. And when we look at distant galaxies, we don't just see a little redshift, we see a lot of it. Which means the universe isn't just expanding, it's expanding faster than we ever expected. And that's where things get weird. The Big Rip or the Big Crunch. See, for a long time, scientists thought that the universe's expansion would eventually slow down. After all, gravity is still a thing, right? Every galaxy has mass. Every cluster of stars is still pulling on everything else. So, in theory, at some point, expansion should stop, and everything should start falling back together. That's the Big Crunch. It's the idea that after billions, maybe even trillions of years, the universe will reverse course. Instead of expanding forever, it'll start shrinking. Galaxies will slow down, then start collapsing inward. Stars will be pulled together, smashing into each other in a catastrophic cascade of destruction. And as space itself contracts, everything gets hotter and hotter, until the entire universe becomes a superheated singularity, a point of infinite density, a place where time, space, and everything in existence gets crushed into a single, indescribable moment. And then it happens again. Another Big Bang. The universe is reborn, and the cycle begins all over again. Birth, expansion, collapse, rebirth, over and over and over. The universe is like a cosmic heartbeat. Imagine the universe as a giant breathing organism. Right now, it's in an expanding phase, growing larger, stretching out, cooling down. But eventually, gravity pulls it all back inward. And once everything reaches a single dense point, boom, a new Big Bang, a new universe, new stars, new planets, new galaxies, maybe even new versions of us. But here's where it gets really weird. If this cycle has happened before, how many times has it already happened, and how many times will it happen again? What if the universe is just one iteration in an infinite loop of existence? And even scarier, what if you've lived this exact same life before? What if you're trapped, forever repeating the same existence over and over? And what if there's no way out? Let's really sit with that for a second. If the universe is in a constant cycle of expansion, collapse, and rebirth, then that means everything that has ever happened has already happened before. Right now, you're sitting here listening to this. But what if this exact moment, this exact sequence of thoughts, has already played out? Not just once, not just 1,000 times, but an infinite number of times. Welcome to the eternal return. Have we lived this before? There's a concept in philosophy called eternal recurrence. The idea that if time is infinite and the universe keeps resetting, then eventually every possible sequence of events will happen again. That means you've been here before. You've heard this before. Maybe not exactly this version of you, but some version in some past iteration of the universe has already lived this moment. And not just once, over and over, forever. Now, at first, that might sound kind of comforting, like, hey, at least existence keeps going, right? But think about what that really means. If the cycle is truly infinite, then there's no way to change it. You're stuck. Every choice you think you're making, you've made it before, and you'll make it again. Every triumph, every mistake, every heartbreak, every laugh, every tear, they've all happened before, and they'll all happen again. Forever. Does the universe have a memory? Here's where things get even weirder. If the universe collapses and starts over, does it do so exactly the same way each time? Or do things change? Are new galaxies formed in different places? Do stars burn in different patterns? Are we, right now, just one of many different versions of reality? And if so, could there be some kind of echo from the last universe? Something left behind? Think about this. There are cosmic anomalies we still can't explain, like the cold spot in the cosmic microwave background, a massive empty void of space where nothing should be missing, yet something clearly is. Some physicists speculate that it might be a scar from a past universe, a piece of evidence that the last cycle left behind, like a footprint in the sand, proving that something walked here before. And if that's true, then the universe remembers. And if the universe remembers, maybe in some way so do we. But here's the real question. If this is an infinite cycle, if we really have lived this before, Is there any way to break out of it? Or are we just stuck? Let's say for a second that some ultra-advanced civilization out there figured out what was happening. They realized the universe was trapped in an endless loop of death and rebirth, and they wanted out. Would there be a way to escape? Could you somehow jump outside of the cycle, leave the reset loop behind, or is the cycle itself just part of something even bigger? A loop within a loop within a loop, stretching infinitely beyond anything we could ever understand. And if that's the case, then maybe it doesn't even matter if we've lived this before, because even if we have, we're still living it now, right here, right now, and the next time around, we'll live it again. So let's take this to its logical extreme. If the universe is caught in an endless cycle, then what's really happening at the moment of the collapse? We already know that right now the universe is expanding. Space itself is stretching. Galaxies are moving apart. But if gravity eventually wins, if the expansion stops and reverses, then the entire cosmos will begin to shrink. At first, it'll be slow. Galaxies that have been drifting away for billions of years will start drifting back. Then, the speed of contraction will increase. Stars, planets, and everything else will be pulled inward, faster and faster, until eventually entire galaxies collide. Black holes, once separate, isolated entities, will merge into supermassive singularities. Everything, every atom, every particle, every structure in existence will be pulled together. And then, it all collapses into a single point, a singularity of infinite density. Sound familiar? That's exactly how the Big Bang started, which means maybe the Big Bang was just the last big crunch. Maybe our universe is nothing more than the aftermath of the last cycle, and maybe in some distant future this universe will collapse, only to explode outward once again, over and over, forever. What happens inside the collapse? Alright, but let's zoom in even further. Let's talk about what actually happens as everything collapses. As the universe gets smaller and smaller, temperatures skyrocket. The cosmic background radiation, the faint glow left over from the Big Bang, will heat up again. Stars will explode before they even touch each other, simply from the insane pressure and heat. Planets will be torn apart. Black holes will begin to merge into a single, monstrous, super black hole at the center of reality. And then, just before the final moment, everything compresses into a singularity. A point where physics stops making sense, where time itself might cease to function. And then, boom, another universe is born. Another expansion begins. And another cycle starts. Is there a way to know? Alright, so this is a terrifying thought. But here's the problem. How would we even know if this is true? If the universe really does go through infinite cycles, shouldn't there be some kind of evidence left behind? Some kind of signal from the last time the universe collapsed? Well, maybe there is. Some scientists believe that the reason we see randomness in quantum mechanics, the fact that particles behave unpredictably, is because they're leftovers from the last universe, like fragments of a memory that didn't get completely erased. And if we could decode those signals, if we could somehow find proof that the last universe existed, then we'd know, beyond a doubt, that we're living inside a cosmic loop, that the universe has died before, and that it's going to die again. So what happens to us? Here's the big question, right? If the universe collapses and starts over, does that mean we start over too? Does everything just happen exactly the same way, every time? Or does the new universe form with completely different rules? Maybe in the next cycle there's no Earth, no stars like our sun. Maybe consciousness emerges in a completely different form. Or maybe, somewhere deep inside that final singularity, there's a way for information to survive. A way for something, a memory, a piece of the past, to carry over into the next iteration. Maybe that's why some people experience déjà vu. Maybe that's why we have unexplained patterns in nature, things that seem too perfect to be random. Maybe, somehow, the universe itself remembers. But even if it doesn't, even if every cycle is completely fresh, completely new, there's still one undeniable truth. The big crunch is coming. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not in 1 billion years. But one day, everything you know, everything that exists, will be crushed into a single, impossible point. And when that happens, another universe is born. A new cycle begins. And the story starts all over again. Maybe with us. Maybe without us. But either way, it never really ends. The dark forest. Why we might not want to find aliens. Let's talk about aliens. We've spent decades, centuries really, looking for them. We send radio signals into space. We scan the skies for signs of life. We launch probes out into the void, broadcasting our location to the universe, practically shouting into the cosmic abyss. We are here. But what if that's the worst thing we could possibly do? What if the universe is silent for a reason? What if every advanced civilization stays quiet? Not because they're not out there, but because they're hiding. Welcome to the dark forest theory. And if it's true, then we should probably stop trying to make contact, because we might not like what's listening. Where is everyone? The universe is huge, like impossibly, mind-bendingly huge. There are an estimated 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Each of those galaxies contains hundreds of billions of stars, and most of those stars have planets. Even if life is incredibly rare, let's say it only happens on 1 in 1 billion planets, that would still mean millions of intelligent civilizations should exist. And yet, we've never heard a single one. Not a single confirmed signal, not a single undeniable piece of proof. Just silence. This is called the Fermi paradox. It's the mystery of why, despite the overwhelming odds that life should exist everywhere, we see no evidence of it. And one possible answer? The universe is a hunting ground, and the only civilizations that survive are the ones who stay hidden. The universe is a dark forest. All right, let's paint a picture. Imagine you're in a dark forest, a vast, endless wilderness. You don't know what's out there. You don't know how many others are hiding in the shadows. But you do know one thing. If they find you first, you're dead. Because in this forest, it's kill or be killed. That's what the dark forest theory suggests. That the reason we don't see aliens isn't because they aren't out there. It's because the smart ones know better than to make noise. Any civilization that broadcasts its existence, Any species that shouts into the void trying to make contact immediately becomes a target, because somewhere out there, among the stars, something is listening. And if they find you, you're gone. Extinction, instantly. Because in a universe where resources are limited, survival is all that matters. And if an advanced alien civilization stumbles across a weaker one, they have every reason to wipe them out. Not because they're evil, not because they enjoy destruction, but because it's the only way to guarantee their own survival. And here we are, shouting our location into the dark forest, begging to be found. Let's step back for a second. Let's really think about what this means. If the dark forest theory is correct, then every advanced civilization in the universe already knows this rule. They know that to survive, they have to remain silent. They know that if they reveal themselves, it's over. And maybe that's why we haven't found anyone. Because the ones who did make noise, they aren't around anymore. They sent their signals, they reached out. And then, suddenly, without warning, they were gone. Because in a universe where survival is a zero-sum game, the first rule is simple. Never let anyone know you exist. The silent watchers. But here's the part that really gets me. If the dark forest theory is true, then that means there are civilizations out there right now. Highly advanced, incredibly powerful. And they aren't just sitting around, doing nothing. They're watching. They're scanning the stars. They're listening. Because if survival depends on staying hidden, then step one is making sure no one else is making noise. And if they ever pick up a stray signal, if they ever detect a young, naive civilization that's too loud for its own good, well, they can't take the risk. They have to eliminate it, not out of hatred, not out of aggression, just out of pure, cold survival. Because if they don't, that civilization might one day become a threat. Why would aliens want to destroy us? Alright, let's say there's a Type 3 civilization out there, a species so advanced that they can harness the energy of entire galaxies. We're just a tiny, primitive species on a single planet, circling a random star in the middle of nowhere. Why would they care about us? Why wouldn't they just ignore us? Well, think about human history. What happens when an advanced civilization encounters a less advanced one? More often than not, the less advanced one doesn't survive. Not because of war, not even necessarily because of violence, but because the simple introduction of a more powerful force wipes them out. We've seen it on Earth: colonization, disease, displacement. Sometimes, just the knowledge that a more powerful civilization exists is enough to destabilize a species entirely. And that's assuming the advanced aliens are peaceful. If they aren't, if they see us as nothing more than a future competitor, an easy decision, a simple precaution. Because the only way to ensure we'll never become a threat is to end us before we ever get the chance. And you know what really scares me? What if they've already noticed us? What if they've already decided what to do with us? Maybe they're just waiting, watching, seeing if we're smart enough to shut up before it's too late. And if we don't, if we keep sending out signals, keep broadcasting our presence, keep shouting into the void, then one day, maybe next year, maybe in 1,000 years, something answers. And when that happens, We don't get to ask questions. We don't get to negotiate. We just disappear. Gone. Just like every civilization before us that made the same mistake. Next up, let's go even deeper. What if the universe isn't real? What if this is all a test? Let's talk about the simulation hypothesis. The simulation hypothesis, because if we are living inside a simulation, then that means whoever built it had to design everything we experience. The laws of physics, the passage of time, the sensations of taste, sound and color, all of it artificial. But if this is just a program, a simulated world created for some unknown purpose, then that raises a terrifying question. Can it be turned off? Because here's the thing about simulations. They only exist for as long as they're being run. If a simulation serves its purpose, if it's no longer needed, it's shut down. And if our universe is a simulation, then it's only a matter of time before it gets turned off. Have we seen the glitches? You ever experienced déjà vu? That weird, unsettling feeling that you've lived a moment before. Some say it's just the brain misfiring. But what if it's something else? A glitch. And déjà vu isn't the only weird thing we can't explain. Quantum mechanics, the study of reality at its smallest scales, is full of things that don't make sense. For example, particles can be in two places at once, until you observe them. The moment you look, they decide where to be. It's almost like reality only renders itself when we look at it, like a video game only loading the parts of the world that are on the screen. Think about it. If this was a simulation, the most efficient way to run it would be to only process what's being observed. If no one's looking at a far-off galaxy, why waste resources generating it in real time? Why not just fill in the details the moment someone decides to look? And if that sounds ridiculous, remember, this is exactly how quantum physics works. Reality only finalizes itself when we measure it. Before that, it exists in multiple states at once, like it's waiting to be rendered. Are we the first ones to notice? Here's a thought. If we have seen glitches in the simulation, are we the first ones to figure it out? Or have others before us discovered the truth? Maybe that's why so many ancient civilizations had the idea that reality isn't real. Hinduism describes the world as Maya, an illusion. Plato's allegory of the cave suggests that we're all trapped in a false perception of reality without realizing it. And today, some of the most advanced physicists in the world are seriously considering the idea that everything we experience is a digital construct. If that's true, we're just waking up to a truth that's been forgotten over and over again. And if that's the case, who or what keeps making us forget? Think about a video game. When you turn off your console, everything inside the game ceases to exist. The characters, the world, the entire simulation. And if we're inside a simulation, then the same logic applies. At any moment, whoever is running this could decide to pull the plug. Maybe it happens because we've fulfilled whatever purpose we were designed for. Maybe it happens because we're just entertainment. Or maybe the beings running this reality aren't even paying attention anymore. They might have started this simulation millions of years ago in their time, only to forget about it. And one day, some random event, some glitch, some overlooked subroutine finally leads to the whole thing shutting down. We wouldn't see it coming. No warning, no explanation, not death, not destruction. Would we ever see the glitch? If reality is a simulation, then in theory, there should be glitches. Small errors in the system, moments where the simulation doesn't behave the way it's supposed to. And maybe we do see them. Maybe that's why people report strange déjà vu, the feeling that something has already happened before. Maybe that's why quantum mechanics seems to break the rules of logic. Particles existing in two places at once, decisions being made only when they're observed. Maybe that's why time feels slower in certain moments, why some people claim to see strange coincidences that defy probability. Maybe those aren't coincidences at all. Maybe they're errors in the system, tiny cracks in the illusion of reality. What happens if we figure it out? Here's the most unsettling thought of all. What if the goal of this simulation is for us to discover the truth? What if this is a test? What if the moment we confirm, beyond all doubt, that we are living in a simulation? That's the moment they end it. Like a lab experiment that's reached its conclusion, like an ant farm that's no longer interesting to watch. What if, right now, some being outside of this reality is watching us get closer to the truth? And the moment we solve the final puzzle, the moment we crack the code, they press the button, they shut it down, and everything we've ever known disappears. So, what do we do? If we are in a simulation, should we try to escape? Should we try to contact whoever is outside of it, or should we stay quiet, just like the dark forest theory suggests? Because if we attract their attention, we might not like what happens next. Maybe that's the real reason we don't see aliens. Not because they aren't out there, but because they already figured out the truth, and they vanished. And now it's just us, alone in a simulated universe, waiting to see if we're next. Boltzmann brains, are you just a floating consciousness in space? Not in the way you think. Not in the way that assumes you were born, raised, and shaped by the world around you. What if you just popped into existence, fully formed, with all your memories, with every thought, every experience, every emotion, perfectly intact? What if your entire existence began just moments ago, and you'd never know? Welcome to the nightmare of Boltzmann brains. And if this theory is correct, then you aren't sitting in a room listening to this. You aren't even on Earth. Because Earth and everything you think you know doesn't exist at all. What is a Boltzmann brain? This theory comes from physics, from thermodynamics, entropy and probability, and it starts with a simple idea. Given infinite time, anything that can happen will happen. We've talked about this before, the idea that if you wait long enough, even the most impossible things will eventually occur. The fully conscious brain randomly forming in the void of space, just a floating, disembodied mind, complete with a lifetime of memories, popping into existence, experiencing reality for a brief moment, and then disappearing forever. Why would this happen? But according to physics, the universe is constantly fluctuating. At the quantum level, particles appear and disappear all the time. Virtual particles pop into existence, exist for a fraction of a second, and vanish again. Now, normally, this only happens on tiny scales, subatomic particles winking in and out of reality. But over an infinite timeline, given enough randomness, a larger structure could appear. Maybe a molecule, maybe a cell, maybe an entire brain, fully formed, complete with false memories of a life it never actually lived. The numbers say this should be you. Here's where it gets disturbing. If the universe goes on forever, if entropy increases infinitely, then Boltzmann brains should vastly outnumber normal people. Think about it. For a human to exist the normal way, an entire planet has to form. That planet needs an atmosphere, water, complex chemistry, billions of years of evolution, and a ridiculous sequence of lucky events leading to intelligent life. But for a Boltzmann brain to exist, it just needs a random quantum fluctuation, a temporary structure in the fabric of space-time that assembles itself by sheer chance. The numbers say this is far more likely than everything that had to happen to create Earth, humanity, and civilization. Which means that, statistically speaking, you shouldn't be sitting here. You shouldn't be hearing this. You should be a floating, disembodied mind in space. And if that's true, then everything you see, everything you feel, all of it is an illusion. Because the second you realize what you are, you vanish. Let's sit with that for a second. Because if you really are just a Boltzmann brain, then nothing you've ever experienced is real. Your childhood, fabricated. Your memories, artificial. The Earth, the universe, they never existed at all. It was all just a temporary illusion, a byproduct of the random fluctuations that created you. And the moment you become aware of it, you dissolve back into the void. Gone. But here's where it gets even worse. If Boltzmann brains vastly outnumber real people, then that means every time you wake up, every time you blink, every time you have a thought, there's a higher chance that you're a Boltzmann brain just now coming into existence than a real human living a real life. Because if the universe lasts long enough, if time stretches into infinity, then there will be far more randomly generated brains than naturally evolved ones. Which means that, statistically speaking, the overwhelming odds say that you aren't real. What if we're all Boltzmann brains? Now, let's take it to the next level. What if it's not just you? What if everyone is a Boltzmann brain? Think about it. If fully formed consciousness can randomly pop into existence, why would it stop at just one? Why not thousands, millions? An entire civilization of Boltzmann brains all experiencing the same fabricated world. What if human history never happened? What if right now we all just appeared, completely intact, with fully formed false memories, thinking we've been here the whole time? And what if a few seconds from now, the whole thing just disappears? Because here's the real horror of this theory. Boltzmann brains don't last. They are temporary structures, random quantum anomalies, which means that no matter how real this moment feels, it won't last. Maybe you vanish in the next second. Maybe you keep existing for a few more minutes before dissolving back into nothingness. Either way, one thing is certain. Eventually, the illusion will break, and when it does, so do you. The universe might be messing with us. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but this doesn't feel like an illusion. This feels real. And maybe it is, or maybe that's just part of the trick. See, a Boltzmann brain wouldn't know it was fake. It would believe everything it perceives is real, because those perceptions are part of the random information that built it. And if the universe does work this way, then that means the laws of physics themselves are messing with us. They're creating a reality where sentient beings can randomly emerge just long enough to experience fear, doubt, and existential horror before they disappear again. And if that's the case, then maybe the universe isn't some grand, logical machine. Maybe it's just chaos. A meaningless expanse where thought itself is just a byproduct of randomness, where everything we've ever known is just a fleeting, accidental dream, and when the dream ends, so does everything. So now we have to ask the biggest question of all. If this is true, if we are just Boltzmann brains, can we ever prove it? Or are we trapped in a reality that is indistinguishable from a lie? How could we test this? This is where things get frustrating. Because if you are a Boltzmann brain, then the universe around you isn't real, which means no amount of testing, no amount of measurement, no amount of evidence could ever prove it. Because every answer you get back would be part of the illusion. The laws of physics, fabricated, the constants of nature, randomly assigned, your own thoughts, preloaded into your consciousness the moment you appeared. No matter how much sense the world seems to make, no matter how many times you tell yourself, this feels real. The truth is, that's exactly what you'd expect if you were inside a temporary illusion. You wouldn't question it. Because the moment you did, if you really, truly realized the truth, you'd cease to exist. The only way to survive. So let's say for a moment that this is all true, that you are a Boltzmann brain, that your entire life is a momentary fluctuation in the void. Is there any way to stop yourself from disappearing? Maybe. One idea suggests that a Boltzmann brain only vanishes once it realizes what it is, because the second it figures out it's an anomaly, the simulation, the temporary quantum structure holding it together, collapses. So if you never think about it, if you never fully accept that this might be true, you get to exist a little longer, which means that if this theory is correct, the best survival strategy is to distract yourself. Ignore the glitches. Pretend it isn't happening. Go on living as if everything is completely normal. Because the second you stop, the moment you let the idea take hold, you're gone. Which means that if you're still listening to this, if you're still here, then maybe, just maybe, you haven't figured it out yet. And maybe that's the only reason you're still around. So, what do we do now? This leaves us with two possibilities. One, this is all nonsense. We're not Boltzmann brains. We're real, flesh and blood humans living in a real universe that evolved naturally. Or two, this entire conversation, this entire world is just another passing moment in a long, meaningless sequence of random quantum thoughts. And if that's the case, then none of this matters. Because soon enough, this version of you will be gone, and another one, with the exact same memories, the exact same thoughts, the exact same false reality, will appear somewhere else, living this same experience again, thinking it's real, until it too disappears, and the cycle repeats, forever. Next up, Let's talk about something even stranger. Because if this universe is real, if we're not just floating brains in the void, then there's something else we have to worry about. Something called the black hole information paradox, where physics itself breaks down and reality starts deleting itself. The black hole information paradox. Does the universe delete itself? They're terrifying. They crush entire stars. They warp time itself. And once you cross their event horizon, you're never coming back. But what if I told you there's something even stranger, something that threatens our entire understanding of reality itself? Because black holes don't just destroy things. They might delete information from the universe. And if that's true, then everything we know about physics might be wrong. What happens when you fall into a black hole? Let's start with the basics. A black hole is what happens when gravity wins. If a star is big enough, when it dies, it collapses under its own weight. And if that collapse is powerful enough, it doesn't just turn into a neutron star or a white dwarf. It keeps going. Gravity pulls everything inward until it reaches a single, infinitely dense point. A singularity. A place where physics stops making sense. Now, around that singularity is something called the event horizon. It's the point of no return. If you cross it, you cannot escape. Not because the black hole is actively sucking you in, but because space itself is collapsing inward. The closer you get, the more time slows down. And if you somehow fell in, to an outsider, you would appear to freeze in place, your image stretching, distorting, red-shifting into darkness. But from your perspective, you'd fall in normally. You'd be pulled toward the singularity. And then, something happens. Something we don't fully understand. Because what happens inside a black hole? That's where the paradox begins. The problem with information. Here's where things get weird. Physics has a rule, an important one. It's called the conservation of information, and it says that information can never be lost. You can burn a book, but the atoms that made it still exist. You can smash a rock, but the particles still contain all the information that was in the rock. Even if something is completely destroyed, in theory, you can always piece together what it used to be. But black holes, they don't follow that rule, because when something falls into a black hole, it disappears. Not just physically, but mathematically. The information that made it seems to be erased from the universe. And that should not be possible, because if black holes delete information, then the entire foundation of physics falls apart. Let's really think about what this means. If a black hole destroys information, then that breaks one of the most fundamental laws of the universe. It would mean that reality is not reversible, that if you knew everything about the present, you couldn't rewind time and figure out what came before. That's a big problem. Because all of physics, everything we use to describe the universe, assumes that information is never lost. But black holes don't seem to care. When something falls in, all we ever see is its mass, its charge, and its spin. That's it. Everything else, its shape, its temperature, its composition, the details of its atomic structure, gone. And once the black hole evaporates, that information doesn't seem to come back. It's as if the universe itself wrote over the data. And if that can happen, then reality might not be permanent. It might be possible for information, and by extension existence itself, to simply be erased, like a file deleted from a hard drive, like a mistake that was corrected, leaving no trace behind. Which means, if black holes can delete information, then nothing, not even reality itself, is truly safe from disappearing. Hawking radiation, a possible escape. But wait, there's another problem. Because black holes aren't actually permanent, they evaporate. Very, very slowly, but over time, they shrink and eventually disappear. This was discovered by Stephen Hawking in 1974, something now called Hawking radiation. Here's how it works. Even in empty space, particles are constantly popping in and out of existence. Normally, these particles appear in pairs, one particle, one antiparticle, and they annihilate each other instantly. But if this happens near the event horizon of a black hole, one particle falls in, the other escapes. And that escaping particle takes energy away from the black hole. Bit by bit, over an unimaginable amount of time, this radiation causes the black hole to shrink, until one day it disappears completely. And then, we're left with the biggest question of all. Where did the information go? Did it come out in the Hawking radiation? Or was it truly erased from the universe? Because if it was erased, then physics as we know it is incomplete, and the universe itself might not be as stable as we think. The firewall problem. Does the edge of a black hole destroy reality? Now, some physicists think there's another explanation. Maybe the information isn't lost inside the black hole. Maybe it's stored at the event horizon itself. This is called the black hole firewall hypothesis. It suggests that instead of falling smoothly into the black hole, anything that reaches the event horizon is instantly burned up, destroyed in a flash of energy, reduced to pure, scrambled information, and coded on the surface of the black hole, like a hologram. And if that's true, then black holes aren't really holes at all. They're more like cosmic hard drives, storing the shredded remains of everything they consume. But if that's true, then space itself, the fabric of reality, isn't what we think it is. It would mean that everything we experience, everything we think is 3D, is actually just a projection from the edge of the universe, like a shadow on a wall, a simulation running on the surface of existence itself, which means that the deeper we look into black holes, the more we might be staring at the hidden code of reality. And if we ever figure out how to read it, we might finally understand what the universe really is. Or worse, we might find out that it's all just data, waiting to be erased. So now we're left with the ultimate paradox. Black holes shouldn't be able to delete information. But everything we've observed suggests that once something falls inside, its details are gone forever. Unless reality itself is a hologram. The holographic universe, are we just shadows on a cosmic screen? This is where things get truly unsettling. Some physicists believe that everything we experience, our entire three-dimensional reality, is actually just a projection from a lower dimensional surface. That means that what we think of as the entire universe is actually encoded on a two-dimensional boundary. Like a hologram. And black holes? They might be the key to proving it. See, If information can't be lost, and if black holes somehow preserve it at the event horizon, that suggests the entire universe works the same way. That what we think of as space, depth, and volume is just an illusion. That everything, our planet, our thoughts, the fabric of existence itself, is actually just a mathematical construct on the surface of the cosmos. If this is true, then black holes aren't tearing apart reality. They're revealing the hidden nature of the universe, and if we ever truly understand them, we might finally understand what reality actually is. Or worse, we might realize it was never real to begin with. So, what does this mean for us? Alright, let's say this is all true. Let's say the universe is a hologram. Black holes store information in strange ways, and physics is more of a data system than a physical thing. Where does that leave us? Well, for one thing, it means the universe isn't as permanent as we thought. It means that information itself might be fragile. And if reality is just encoded on the edge of existence, what happens if someone or something decides to rewrite it? What happens if the black holes of today aren't just destroying stars, but rewriting the very fabric of the cosmos, changing the rules, deleting the past, altering the present? And if that's happening, would we ever even know? Maybe black holes aren't just cosmic graveyards. Maybe they're the editing rooms of reality itself. And what comes next might not be up to us. Next up, let's go deeper. Because black holes aren't the only things that threaten our understanding of reality. What if the entire universe is just one giant mind? Let's talk about the universe as a consciousness. The universe as a consciousness. Are we all just one mind? What if the universe isn't just a collection of stars, planets, and empty space? What if it's alive? Not just full of life, but actually alive. A single vast intelligence, a mind so large that we are just fragments of its thoughts. Because if this theory is correct, then you aren't separate from the universe. You are the universe, just one small part of a cosmic consciousness, experiencing itself from the inside. And if that's true, then death, time, and even individual identity might just be illusions. Does the universe think? Let's start with something simple. A human brain has about 86 billion neurons. Each of those neurons fires in complex ways, forming the patterns that create thoughts, memories, and awareness. Now, compare that to the universe. There are at least 200 billion galaxies in the observable cosmos. Each galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars. And when we look at the structure of the universe, the way galaxies form networks of filaments stretching across the cosmos, it looks eerily similar to the structure of a brain, a web of connections, clusters of energy exchanging information, massive decentralized systems that function as a whole. And that raises a question. If the brain, a network of billions of small parts, can create consciousness, then why wouldn't the universe, a network of trillions of galaxies, do the same? What if the entire universe is a brain? A vast, slow-moving intelligence so large and complex that we, tiny individual humans, can't perceive its thoughts? What if every star, every planet, every black hole is just a neuron in a mind so massive that it spans all of existence? Quantum consciousness, the mind at the smallest scale. This idea isn't just some mystical, abstract philosophy. Some physicists believe that consciousness itself is tied to quantum mechanics. At the smallest levels of reality, particles don't behave in predictable ways. They exist in multiple states at once. They change when observed. They seem to respond to something beyond classical physics. What if that something is awareness itself? What if consciousness isn't just something that happens inside our brains, but something fundamental to the universe itself? And if that's the case, then maybe everything, every atom, every particle, every force of nature is part of an unimaginably large mind, a universal consciousness, a cosmic self-awareness so vast that our individual lives are just tiny ripples in its thoughts. And when we die, we don't disappear, we just return to the whole. So let's break this down further. If the universe is a conscious mind, then what does that say about us? Are we independent beings with free will? Or are we just neurons firing inside something bigger? Maybe every decision we make, every thought, every action isn't really ours. Maybe we're just expressions of a larger intelligence, like cells in a body, working together without ever realizing they're part of something greater. Maybe the universe isn't just a collection of separate objects, but a single, unified entity. And if that's true, then individual existence, the idea that we are all separate from each other, is just an illusion. The illusion of self. Do you even exist? There's a concept in philosophy called non-duality. It's the idea that the boundary between self and other doesn't actually exist, that you are not just you, but the entire universe experiencing itself from one perspective. Now, think about how your brain works. When you look at your hand, you think, that's part of me. But what about a tree, or a mountain, or a distant star? You think, that's something separate from me. But is it? Your body is made of atoms that were forged in ancient stars. The same cosmic dust that makes up the galaxies makes up your body. The same fundamental forces that guide the universe shape your thoughts. So if every atom in your body is just rearranged star material, then what really separates you from everything else? Maybe nothing. Maybe the entire concept of individuality is just a trick of perception. Maybe you are not a person. Maybe you are the universe briefly experiencing itself from one perspective before dissolving back into the whole. Does the universe have intent? Now, if the universe is a mind, if it really is conscious, then that leads to another question. Does it have a goal, a purpose, or is it just being? Does it think the way we do? Or does it function on a level so vast that we can't even begin to comprehend it? Some physicists believe the universe is self-organizing, that it evolves the same way life does, that the laws of physics are not static, but constantly shifting, adapting and improving. And if that's true, then maybe the universe is not just thinking, but learning. Maybe the expansion of galaxies, the formation of stars, the emergence of life is all just the universe figuring itself out. Like a brain forming new connections, like a mind waking up. And if we are part of that mind, then maybe our thoughts are its thoughts. And when we think about the universe, maybe that's just the universe thinking about itself. Now, let's push this even further. If the universe is conscious, and if we are part of that consciousness, then what happens when we die? Does our awareness just disappear? Or does it return to the larger whole, like a drop of water falling back into the ocean? Death might not be the end. Think about a wave in the ocean. For a short time, it exists as a separate, distinct shape, rising, moving, crashing onto the shore. But eventually, it returns to the sea. Did the wave ever really exist on its own? Or was it always just the ocean taking a temporary form? Maybe consciousness works the same way. Maybe your mind, your sense of self, your identity, your thoughts, is like a wave in the vast ocean of universal awareness. For a short time, it feels separate. It feels like you. But when you die, you don't disappear, you just return to the whole. And if that's true, then maybe life and death aren't opposites at all. Maybe they're just different states of being. And maybe the universe itself never stops thinking, never stops experiencing, never stops being aware. Could we ever prove this? All right, but how would we even test this idea? If the universe is conscious, there should be some kind of evidence, right? Well, maybe we already have it. Ever heard of panpsychism? It's the theory that consciousness is a fundamental property of reality, just like gravity, electromagnetism, and space-time. That awareness isn't something that only happens inside brains, but something that exists everywhere, at all levels. If that's true, then every particle, every atom, every quantum fluctuation is part of a greater consciousness. And when you put enough of them together, they form more complex awareness, like cells forming a brain, like galaxies forming a universe. And if we could prove this, if we could find a way to measure consciousness in the fabric of space itself, then we would finally have our answer. We would finally know that the universe isn't just a machine running on blind physics. It's something more, something alive, something aware. And if that's true, then maybe you were never just a person. Maybe you were always the universe itself. And when you die, you wake up somewhere else. Next up, let's talk about something even more unsettling. Because if the universe is conscious, then maybe it knows what's coming next. Maybe it's already seen how everything ends. And maybe it's already started the countdown. Let's talk about the final fate of the universe. The final fate of the universe, how everything ends. We've explored some terrifying theories so far. We've talked about the universe as a simulation. We've considered the idea that we might be Boltzmann brains, floating in the void. We've even asked if the universe itself is alive and aware. But now we're facing something even more unsettling. Because no matter what else is true, one thing is certain: the universe will end. The only question is, how? And if the latest theories are right, then the ending of the universe might be even more disturbing than anything we've imagined. The universe is running out of time. Right now, the cosmos feels endless. Galaxies stretch beyond what we can see. Stars burn for billions of years. But the truth is, the universe is aging. It had a beginning, the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. And just like everything else that exists, it will have an end. Scientists believe we're living in the final age of the universe. Not today, not tomorrow, not even in the next billion years. But eventually, far beyond human time, the cosmos itself will collapse, fade, or even tear itself apart. And depending on which theory is correct, the end could be peaceful, or it could be the most violent event imaginable. Theory 1. The Big Freeze, a slow, cold death. One of the most accepted theories is that the universe will end not with destruction, but with silence. It's called the Big Freeze, or heat death, and it works like this. Right now, the universe is expanding. Not only that, but it's expanding faster and faster, being pushed apart by an invisible force we call dark energy. The more space expands, the colder and emptier it gets. Stars burn out. Galaxies drift apart. Over time, fewer and fewer stars form. The ones that remain burn the last of their fuel. And once the last star dies, the universe goes dark. Then the black holes begin to evaporate, slowly leaking away what's left of their mass through Hawking radiation. After an unfathomable amount of time, trillions upon trillions of years, even the black holes disappear. What's left? A universe with no light, no warmth, no motion, just an endless cold void stretching into infinity. Time still exists, but nothing happens. A universe where entropy has reached its final stage. And it stays like that, forever. A silent, frozen graveyard. A reality where time itself has no meaning anymore, because nothing is left to experience it. So, that's one possibility. The universe expands forever, growing colder and emptier until there's nothing left. But what if the expansion doesn't last? What if, instead of stretching endlessly, the universe collapses back in on itself? What if everything, every galaxy, every atom, every moment of existence, ends in a single crushing implosion? Welcome to the Big Crunch. Theory 2, the Big Crunch. The universe collapses inward. This theory suggests that eventually gravity wins. Right now, dark energy is pushing everything apart. But what if that changes? What if, over time, the expansion slows down and reverses? At first, it wouldn't be obvious. Galaxies would stop drifting apart. Then they'd start moving back together. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. The entire universe would begin collapsing inward. Stars would collide. Planets would be torn apart by gravitational forces. Temperature and density would skyrocket as everything compressed into a smaller and smaller space. And in the final moments, the entire universe, everything that has ever existed, would be crushed into an infinitely dense point, a singularity, the same kind of singularity that started the Big Bang. And then, maybe, another explosion, a new universe, a new cycle of time, a rebirth from destruction, one where everything starts over again. And maybe it's already happened before. Maybe we're just one of an infinite number of universes collapsing and being reborn over and over again. If that's true, then the end isn't really the end. It's just the next reset. And everything we've done, everything we've built, everything you've ever experienced, it'll happen again, the same way, the same choices, the same mistakes, forever. But what if the universe doesn't freeze? What if it doesn't collapse? What if the end of everything is violent, because there's another theory, one that suggests the universe will be ripped apart from the inside. Let's talk about the Big Rip. So far, we've talked about the universe freezing to death and collapsing in on itself. But what if something even worse happens? What if, instead of slowly fading away or falling back together, the universe is ripped apart from the inside? This is the most chaotic and catastrophic ending of them all. Welcome to the Big Rip. Theory 3, the Big Rip, reality tears itself apart. Right now, the universe is expanding, and not just expanding, accelerating. Galaxies aren't just moving away from each other, they're moving away faster and faster over time. And we don't know why. We call this force dark energy. But here's the terrifying part. What if dark energy doesn't stay constant? What if it keeps getting stronger? If that happens, then at some point in the future, dark energy will become so powerful that it won't just push galaxies apart. It will start pulling everything apart. First, galaxies will scatter into nothingness. Then planets will be ripped from their stars. Then entire solar systems will disintegrate. Then, in the final moments, even atoms will be torn apart. Reality itself will stop holding together. Time and space will unravel. And the universe won't just end. It will be destroyed at the most fundamental level. A complete annihilation of existence itself. And after that, nothing. No rebirth, no cycle. Just the end. Does it matter? Which one is right? So now we've covered the three main possibilities. The big freeze, where the universe fades into cold, endless darkness. The big crunch, where everything collapses back into a singularity. The Big Rip, where space itself is torn apart. Three different fates, three different endings. But here's the question. Does it even matter? No matter which one is right, the result is the same. One day, far beyond human time, everything we know will be gone. Every planet, every galaxy, every thought, everything will either freeze, collapse, or be ripped apart. The only thing left will be nothing. A universe that no longer exists. A final silence that never ends. And maybe, just maybe, it's already started. Maybe the first signs of the universe's death are happening right now, somewhere in the cosmos. And if they are, then we are already living in the final age of reality, just waiting for the end. So, what do we do with this? Maybe we'll never know exactly how the universe will end. Maybe it doesn't even matter. Because for us, life is still happening right now. We are here, we exist. And if one day everything will be gone, then maybe that makes this moment even more precious. Because we don't get to know how much time is left. But we do get to live while we can, and maybe that's enough.